So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Barbara Moss. I can't remember how we met, but I'm very glad I met you. And then started to hear about your role as a patient advocate, and then read your marvelous book here, Who's Been Peeping in My Bed, which I've read. And I wish I'd read before when I first had cancer. So I would recommend it to everybody. But you're here to talk about your cancer journey and how you became an advocate as well.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And it was lovely Mandy who introduced us to you, and through the course of her husband's journey, which was something that we were able, I hope, to help with. But I'd like to talk now about taking responsibility for your treatment and how we took responsibility for my treatment. So, hi everyone. I'm Barbara, and I've come through stage 4 bowel cancer. My primary was in the ascending colon, and it spread to a 15-centimeter tumor in my left liver. Later on, I had further recurrence in the lymph. However, the great news, and which is why I'm here to talk to you today, is that having been given a prognosis of just 3 months and actually told there was no hope, I'm here and cancer-free totally for 13 years and still kicking. I feel very privileged, actually, to be talking to you. I'm not used to talking to a group of pure patients and carers. I'm usually campaigning, speaking about access to drugs, licensing of drugs, correct diagnosis, and personalized treatment. Recently, I've spoken out quite a lot about the neglect of cancer patients and its consequences during the COVID, and also priority for their vaccination. However, there is a reason I campaign, and it's personal. I'm certain that if my family and I had not taken an active role in my treatment, then I would have died. I knew nothing about cancer when I was first diagnosed, but I think that our increased knowledge over time, assertiveness, and fight for certain treatment gave me a positivity and awareness that actually helped me to survive. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we turned around the situation from no hope to the full life that I have 15 years on. I was a teacher and 52 years old when I was diagnosed at stage 4. I was actually diagnosed at A&E because I was anemic, but I'd been misdiagnosed for 6 years. So you can imagine how we all felt when my job came to an abrupt end and we were told this. Now, I was told that my treatment could only be palliative. There was nothing they could do. Those were their words. I was left in hospital. Mark had to go home and tell our sons. I needed an immediate blood transfusion and a CT scan a few days later. No hope is final. However, certain people remain in my memory as people who helped me to jump hurdles. One of these was my gastroenterologist. I remember distinctly, he sat on the edge of my bed. He said he had surgery all afternoon, but he was attending an MDT meeting on my behalf that lunchtime. And he would promise to report to me. He made it his mission to do that before his surgery that afternoon. He did. I remember him being totally out of breath. He'd actually been running. And he said there was a plan. the liver surgeon from Birmingham, and he was only there once every 4 weeks, happened to be there that lunchtime and attend the MDT meeting. And he said that if the tumour in my liver shrank away from the portal vein, then he was prepared to operate. And this was the only vein that had to remain intact. So why did this make such a difference to me? Well, it was because I now had a plan. I now had something to work for, and it gave me hope. I would now say, actually, that hope was nearly half of my medicine. It certainly helped my treatment to work because I felt good, I felt uplifted. But because I knew so little, I was very much at the mercy of my doctors. I accepted everything that they told me and I didn't question it. There I was. I missed my work. It was one day after I'd been working, I was in a bed in hospital, and I spent many hours there writing lessons for the pupils I'd left, feeling responsible for them. So the stand-in teachers would teach them exactly what I wanted them to learn. On returning home, several days later, the usual things happened. I'm sure you all know about it. Several emergency visits to hospital. One because my PICC line, I was allergic to it. And then reactions to my chemo, and so on. I had tried both types of chemo. The first, oxaliplatin, didn't work. And then I was on irinotecan and with different add-ons, and there was nothing left for me. Things weren't looking good. However, we read about biological treatments being used in Europe and America, and we asked about them. And I was told they were not available on the NHS. But this was a start to my drive, and I truly believe that it helped me to survive. From a position where I totally accepted my fate, I now had an inquiring mind and became very much part of the team working on my health. After all, it was my life, my family, and I felt that I should be aware of the choices regarding my future and making decisions on what was going to happen to me. Suddenly, I became responsible. And Mark, my husband, and I would sit together and write down the questions we wanted to ask at the next appointment so that we didn't forget anything. And we'd hand this to the doctor. He could decide which were the most important questions first. We had entered a new life that very much put us in control of what was going to happen. And we greatly involved the media for the following years. I was refused the biological treatment I'd asked for. So we appealed, and I attended that meeting with the PCT at the time. Systems changed now. But in the end, we paid for it. And that was a decision my family made, not me. It cost £21,000. In 2007, you lost all your NHS entitlement if you added one private drug to your regime. Interestingly, because of the media, my story was in all the press and taken to Parliament. And this actually helped to change the law so that now you can purchase a private drug without losing your NHS entitlement. I was lucky. The drug worked dramatically, and my surgeon could now operate. But he did tell me that it was a 50-50 chance I would not survive that operation. There were 2 teams of surgeons involved, liver and gastroenterologist. So it was my decision, purely my decision. And I was prepared to take that risk. Quality of life over overall survival is a decision you all have to make. I was so happy to be offered this. I felt so lucky. 14 years on from 2007, when I had my op, there's so much more known about cancer. There is no one size fits all. There are different types of treatments: biologicals, radiotherapy, radioactive spheres, immunotherapy, and combinations of all these drugs. There is specific treatment for patients with certain mutations of bowel cancer and diagnostic testing to make treatment personal to you. Although there's a long way to go, we have come a long way from when I was ill. It's difficult to find all the pathways open to us, but it really is important to try. I fully believe that making your own choices gives you the determination to adhere to your treatment, even when it's difficult. It helps to create a feel-good factor that again helps your treatment to work and helps you to get through. There were many things that helped me to feel uplifted. Waking each morning and thinking it's a brand new day. Hearing the birds sing, listening to music, all these feel-good factors. I like to cook, but I find it difficult because of my tiredness to cook a complete meal. However, I thought I can chop onions. Later, I can cut the meat. Later in the day, I can prepare the veg. And by the end of the day, and believe me, the whole day, I had cooked a family meal. This gave me so much pleasure because it was something I could do for the rest of the family and something that made things feel normal. And that gave me great pleasure. I was not used to being so dependent on everyone else. And for me, it was uplifting again. Mark and I used to take regular trips away in the caravan between chemos, always ensuring we were within 1 hour of a hospital. And sometimes I'd even arrange to have my bloods tested, because that had to be done in between, at the nearest hospital. And that's possible to do. And even though I needed to rest every afternoon for a few hours, Mark could play the guitar outdoors. And again, it made every day special. Every day can be special in doing something you love. And all these things helped me through my treatment. A few years ago, I was asked to comment on a large research study on how a group of bowel cancer patients felt through their journey as time went on, starting with the feeling of how helpless you feel at first diagnosis, and then progressing through to finding hope and acceptance. I've tried to relate this to my own experience. So here goes. Why do we describe cancer as being in a battle? And with stage 4, even a lost battle. It is true to say cancer patients are fighting for their lives, but that's not all there is to it. Cancer breaks down the way you feel from the moment of diagnosis towards yourself, your own body, and even other people. And for me, I needed to re-find how everything fitted together. My life was turned upside down. Family's life turned upside down. I had to find a new relationship between my body, the cancer, and even how I fitted into it. I entered an emotional journey where my attitude towards myself, the cancer I was going through, and my body, the treatments I was having, my doctors, and my awareness of other people changed because I felt so different. These feelings helped me to gain a new sense of hope. And these can help you to accept living with your disease. What was happening to me, I was starting to get used to. You cannot tell any recently diagnosed cancer patient to just become empowered or to take control. It takes time to come to this point in your journey. You can see in this graph how the power line in this diagram changes from the newly diagnosed patient who becomes empowered as their journey progresses. And that's exactly how it was for me. I was becoming empowered over time and gradually taking control. In this research, I found a couple of interesting comments from people who are entering third-line treatment. The one person said, life changes when you become a wife, a mother. Your life changes totally when you get a diagnosis. Don't try to get back to where you were. Just change into what you're going to be. And another said, it's all about transformation. You aren't the same person anymore. And I wasn't. To be honest, I don't want to be the same person. What would be the point in that? And here, I found the best description I've ever seen of going through one's journey, certainly fitted with mine, and going through it in harmony with cancer, and not treating it as an alien or a beast, but rather part of yourself, because it is. At first, diagnosis pulls a person apart, physically and emotionally, because nothing will ever be the same again. And then you carry on. As you try to adapt to your new situation, your life comes to a stop and changes. You face the biggest challenge. Depending on your stage of your journey, of your cancer, you might be living with a ticking bomb and you just don't know anything. That's how I was. The next stage is becoming aware that all is not lost. And you realize that you might have the strength to tackle it, to survive, and the courage to face it, to face your cancer. And then learning. Sometimes in life, I was at this point at the beginning, that the best strategy is letting go and fostering harmony with the cancer. The next stage is getting in touch with what you actually are, fully, truthfully, and unconditionally. And then Satori is a Japanese Buddhist term, and it means understanding and seeing into one's true nature. You can't be afterwards what you weren't before, possibly. You've got to develop on what you are. And now you can find new hope and meaning in life through actions for other people. Finally, you find the wave, accepting things just as they are and embracing uncertainty. You just don't know what's going to happen. And you find newfound familiarity because this is a situation you now are in. And you learn to accept that. And learning how this transition takes place is learning how to step out of the box, out of your body, and looking at yourself from outside yourself. And viewing now healthcare practitioners as part of your extended family. It's someone endearing whom you work with. You view them as trusted partners in your journey. And you take on a critical approach, questioning the scary numbers you were given at the beginning of your journey, at the beginning of your diagnosis. And you start to investigate your options. You start to ask questions. You get information and advice from various sources, not just your doctor. You ask for everything to be explained so you can understand what's happening. And you see your doctors as the experts in medicine, but you can also see yourself as the expert in your body. You learn that sometimes in life, the best strategy is letting go. And you are now living in harmony with your cancer, and you learn to accept it. So you develop a new attitude of self-care within your own self. Learning to let go actually opens up possibilities of discovering new things about yourself. You can turn loss into gain. My first presentation was in Westminster, and the night before, my son asked me, "Mom, are you pleased you got cancer?" I can explain that later on. But what a question. I changed my talk the night before. I learned so much about life through my cancer journey and experienced some moments of complete peace that I'd never experienced before. Accepting things as they are makes life a whole lot easier. It doesn't mean you give up, but it does mean you don't fight. No one can pretend cancer's easy or fun. I hope this process can help you to understand your journey and also help you through it. You may be interested. I wrote and published a book about my journey, including early day campaigning for access to drugs. Campaigning for others meant that I was not thinking about myself, and that focus was therapeutic for me. I enjoyed doing this and still do. All the proceeds for my book go to Bowel Cancer UK and St. Richard's Hospice, two charities that really helped me so much. I'm happy to post a copy to anyone who'd like to buy it. It's been recommended highly by Macmillan. Thank you so much for listening. And back to Steve.
Unmute. Well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you for that glimpse into your journey. And I must say, I concur with Macmillan. I really found this a very moving book, very well written. And as I think I said to you earlier, I wish I'd got a copy when I was diagnosed. Perhaps they should give it out, but still. So what we're going to do now is invite the attendees in into the room so that we can all come onto the screen. And Barbara has kindly offered to do a Q&A with us. Really, it's over to everybody to come in and ask questions. I have a number of questions that come straight out of my thoughts, which I've got here, and oops. So maybe I can kick off with this by saying your challenge was to get funding for Avastin at the time, which I can remember Avastin featuring in the news and in the all of the press. And what's the situation with that drug now?
It did become licensed. The Cancer Drug Fund was also set up as a result of our campaigning at the time. And we were invited through Bowel Cancer UK to number 10, where we met Sir Professor Mike Richards, who was a cancer czar, who was asked to look into the situation of accessing drugs and the situation of cancer treatment. I came up with 14 recommendations, all of which were accepted by the Prime Minister, it was David Cameron at the time. And it was wonderful. I gave Sir Professor Mike Richards a big hug and said thank you to him. Then Avastin became available for a very short time, and within 2 years it became unavailable again, and a drug for which you had to apply and prove yourself exceptional. Something that I very much, I wrote about it in the book because I tried to prove myself exceptional and immediately felt embarrassed, because who am I to say I'm exceptional? Every life is exceptional. But I was doing it at the time to try to access the drug. We were sort of in that sort of desperate feeling where people often get when they're in that part of their journey. So unfortunately, there are biosimilars, which is a great thing, because now Avastin's been on the market, and I think there are at least three that can be accessed, which are, they perform the same thing, and they're highly backed and recommended by the cancer organizations. And I would certainly be very happy to use one of those drugs today if I was in this situation.
So you were in a situation where by accessing a private drug or paying for it privately, that sort of negated your NHS entitlement to treatment, didn't it? And so but that has now changed.
That has changed, and it's because my story was actually taken to Parliament, because it was all over the world, not just the UK. And there was a pressure placed on the government to do something about it, which is why they appointed Sir Professor Mike Richards. So yes, it did become, do you want to add to that?
No, there's not much. You're saying
Mark's
as
here.
It is.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. It did become available then, but now it isn't. And we have reservations about that. A lot more is known about personalized treatment, and Avastin isn't a miracle cure. It is specific to certain types of cancer, and although they don't have biomarkers, which we deeply regret, there are certain indications which show whether it's worth trying Avastin, but it isn't a miracle cure. I was very, very lucky. Only 5% of cancer patients generally have any chance of having success with Avastin. I'm talking specifically about bowel cancer.
Yeah. So any question? I saw your hand up there, Mandy.
I'm just going to unmute ourselves. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the lovely talk. I was getting a bit emotional in the middle there. I was recognising certain aspects of the journey, and Paul was as well, but I don't know whether we're in the same situation on that scale, but definitely that is an interesting scale to use. I was just going to pop in there about the Avastin, and I know that's, as you say, not relevant to a lot of people, but I wrote down when you were talking, how do we change the NHS? You changed the situation there by your campaigning so that people going forward could get these non-prescription drugs and still get their NHS treatment. And we're trying to get Avastin costs, well, Avastin costs are reduced. So when you were accessing the drug, was it in 2009? I think it was
2007.
2007. It was a lot of money. It has now come down, but the issue now is the trusts, the hospital trusts are individually making decisions. So in some parts of the country, you can get Avastin for £300. In fact, one of our bowel cancer guys, I don't know whether he's on today, is doing just that in Winchester very soon. And yet other people, say in Devon, are paying or expected to pay over £2,000. So the campaigning goes on. You know, you've campaigned, and we're all grateful for that, because Paul is using Avastin and he's still getting his NHS treatment as well. So that's fantastic.
And it's working very, very well.
And it's working. But it's another campaign. It's another campaign is what I wanted to say. And it just feels like, and not necessarily just putting Avastin aside, this could be happening to lots of people on here and with different cancers. And it feels like you're having to fight all the time. What do you say to that? I mean,
the patient story is the most powerful story of any. And being there, if you can spread that news. I was really lucky with our local newspaper, the Worcester News, who took the story and thought, God, this is a front page, and put it on the front page. And I was very tired, I must say, but I had phone calls all day long. And the television, the media, Channel 4 News, I remember suddenly I was dusting a shelf. I was up a step ladder when there was a knock on the door, and there was just some recent news, some recent happening. And I hadn't washed my hair or showered or anything. And they said, we want to write a story. And then I had other people answering my phone while I was on Channel 4 News talking to Dermot Murnahan and
News, yeah.
Sky News, it was, sorry. And Mark was at work and he put it on at work. He didn't know any of this. It's how things happened. But getting that local media connected, spreading the story, getting people to back you. Bowel Cancer UK can raise a campaign. And I was very much involved at this stage with Bowel Cancer UK in the early days. I was going off to London speaking to pharmaceutical companies and things with Mark because I needed that support. I was very ill, but I actually spoke. We were there for the licensing of Avastin with NICE, and we were there speaking to oncologists regarding how Avastin worked for me. And, it was an attempt even, let's say, in the early days that the pharmaceutical companies weren't as afraid as they are now of using these patients to publicize. Now they've got to be very, very careful. So I was there talking about these things, even with expenses paid from them. So these things, I think just getting it publicized locally and trying to spread it and getting that support is the best way of getting your story through and changing the situation, which isn't satisfactory. The lottery code.
This situation with the postcode lottery, which is basically what you're still talking about. It's been around for many, many years, and we were up against that same principle. But I think now collectively, with so many people connected, and so many people talking to each other and able to discussing all these issues, I think that is one of the tremendous opportunities that we've all got to try to highlight these issues and bring it to the governmental departments to say, look, this is now time to address these issues.
Yeah, I mean, Barbara, you made a point there, and I took on board earlier when you said you need to take that responsibility yourself, which we have done pretty much all along, and we have actually now got Avastin in our own trust reduced quite significantly, not just for me, but for all of the patients there. And it's the persistence that you need to do that. And I'm really pleased, not purely, not on a, not trying to sort of show off or anything really. I'm just really pleased that persistence has paid off, and other people perhaps could do that as well in their own trusts.
And take that story to the press that you've made that difference, and what other people can do. And I think, Steve, through this group, it's something that could happen, that you could link the different authorities, because it is not right that the authorities are making profit on your health.
It is wrong, you're right. And that's why we campaign continually, because it isn't right that somebody should be paying £2,000 and somebody paying £3,000, £300, sorry, within a very short distance. In fact, in my own trust, there were 3 hospitals. One of them was charging £300 less than another in my own trust. How can that be right?
It isn't right.
Thankfully, that's changed. Yeah, that's changed. But
we've come across cases recently of people being treated at Cheltenham, which is my local cancer treatment centre, and that's the nearest treatment centre for some people who live in Wales. You know, it's just cross border, and what is available for the people attending from Wales is different from the people attending from around Cheltenham. You know, and that makes a bit of a mockery of the whole thing. And you know, obviously, if there's anything we as a support group can do to help support, I know there's lots of campaigns from Bowel Cancer UK, the main bowel cancer charity, and certainly I do everything I can to support them and their campaigns. But as you two have pointed out, you do actually have to go out there on your own at times to make it happen. Can I bring anybody else in? We've got a few people who are on Zoom, but they've not got their cameras switched on. So, but they can unmute and ask questions if they like. And also we've got Peter and Philip there as well. Any questions from yourselves? Philip's looking there.
Hi. Oh, hold on. I'll let Philip get in first.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Peter. I'm leaping in there. So, yeah. Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, that was quite a talk and quite a journey, definitely, and rang true for some of my cancer journey as well. I was really interested to hear if you'd read the book Radical Remissions. I don't know if you come across this, only because it was written by a doctor who basically looked at 100, well, I think she actually interviewed over 1,000 people whose cancer had got better. And what she did was research all those 1,000 people and pull out the 9 things that sort of overlapped between them. What were the things that they were all doing that actually led to them having this, or possibly led to them having that radical remission. And interesting, one of the things that came out really strongly was taking control of your health, which is what you were saying. So that really sort of fitted with that. And I guess some of the other things they talk about are things that you were doing as well. But I just thought it's one of my books that I would certainly recommend to people if they haven't come across it. It's some of the real basics, like, following your intuition, exercise, nutrition, those sorts of, things. But yeah, as Steve and some of you know, I work just a few hours a week for an integrative cancer healthcare charity, Yes to Life, which looks at conventional treatment, complementary treatment, and lifestyle. And so I guess for me, some of the things that are of interest is when we follow that integrative approach, doing the exercise, doing the nutrition, doing all those things, that's when you sort of maximize your health. Yes. Yeah, I just wondered if you'd had any thoughts or anything on that.
It's very, very important. I think it's 50% of your well-being is how you approach things, and how what you get out of stuff is what you put in, for definite. So, and as a carer, it's also helpful for the person that you're caring for to know that you're thinking about things they might not automatically think of. So, it's on another matter, but this communication is very important. We're always talking to one another about the things that matter to us. And we know people, that is part and parcel of what we can definitely say is good for you.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, Barbara.
No, sir. Thank you, Philip, for recommending the book, and it certainly sounds interesting. Let's look it out. Definitely, so much more is known, and there's evidence to show that keeping yourself active, doing what you can do. It doesn't have to be going to the gym and running on a treadmill, but just doing what you can do and a tiny bit more. Always pushing yourself that little bit. When you don't feel like getting up out of the chair, just getting up, walking around the downstairs. If you can, walk upstairs and down just for the sake of it. push yourself just that little bit to be active, because that makes a difference. They have evidence of that. And also your diet, they have evidence of that. And I love wine, but you know, 2 years before I was diagnosed, I stopped drinking it. And just because I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I'd been misdiagnosed for 6 years, so I obviously was not well on the way at that point. And I didn't drink all the way through. I love it now again, but I'm in moderation. But your body tells you things and you need to listen to it. And so what you're saying is absolutely right. But certainly food and physical education, and with advice, you know, don't just go mad on anything. And don't do too much, because that can have adverse effects.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so I think as a support group, that's one of the things we can advise. We're not a medical group, we're a peer support group, but one of the things we can encourage people to do that not the doctors don't necessarily do is get your nutrition sorted out, get your exercise going, get good sleep, all these things. And I think that's very important. Peter, were you going to ask a question there? And can I just, before you say something, the other people who are in the room who we can't see because I haven't got their video turned on, you can put the question in chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can speak directly. Anyway, Peter, over to you.
Yes, hello. I'm an engineer by background. My father, in fact, was a scientist, and when I was young, he used to tell me about all the vitamins and how they helped your body, etc. So that kind of stuck with me a bit. And I was in the space industry, putting up spacecrafts. You're probably watching from one of my dishes if you're watching Sky. When suddenly I got colon cancer, stage 3B, in the end of 2012. And I had an operation New Year's Eve. In fact, I woke up to all these explosions and found that there were fireworks. Then I had 6 months of chemo to mop things up. And 5 years later, my surgeon said, it's not going to come back, you're cured, basically. Now, I've been tracking every single parameter of my blood test since 2014 in a massive spreadsheet. I also have smoldering multiple myeloma as well, so I have to go for blood tests. There's no effect or anything. It was just picked up as part of a stoma reversal operation, actually. So when I was going for these blood tests for the smoldering multiple myeloma, I got the phlebotomist to slip in my CEA test each time. So I continued to track that. And at the end of, I think it was 2017 or 2018, I noticed that it was starting to climb. It wasn't climbing by much. It first went to 5, which it hadn't done, it's been rock solid, and then it eventually went up to 11. So I contacted my a new surgeon and said, look, you need to get me a PET CT scan, which showed that it had come back and it had spread. That was really as a result of me taking interest in my myself, really, even after people had said, no, don't worry about it, you're cured, it will come back, etc. And since then, I've been put on fulfiri with cetuximab. I've had my 41st fulfirian cetuximab infusion. And I was hoping to have the next one off because I did have a break because my skin just wasn't recovering. I was getting cuts on my fingers and feet. And they said, yes, you can have it off. So I had it off. And when I had my last infusion, it was fantastic. My body had really recovered and was able to repair my skin. I really felt very well. So I went to see my oncologist, or his deputy, this week, and I actually handed him a copy of the NICE guidelines, which said about the 6-week rule, but it also said the 6-week rule for cetuximab had been suspended until the 1st of July, when it would be reviewed. So I said to him, could I have another time off? I mean, effectively going to my treatment every month as opposed to every fortnight. I still wanted to have my blood test monitored every 2 weeks as before. because I'm an engineer. I'd like to measure things. I like to interpret results. But this was bounced back at me because the oncologist had spoken to the pharmacy, who apparently are in charge of the purse strings, which I hadn't appreciated. And they said, this text doesn't apply to your treatment. So this is where I currently am. In fact, I posted on the website about it, and Stephen suggested I join this group.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm one of these people who likes to take control, likes to monitor, likes to look at results as an engineer and take action as a result of the engineer. And I want to try a trial like this myself, where it's extended to once every 4 weeks and monitored and see what the reaction is. But I've basically hit a brick wall of people who say, well, that's not what we do. That's not the protocol. I think I've heard a few times. The protocol and the manufacturer's recommendation say it's got to be every 2 weeks. And I'm really scratching my head and trying to work out how the best way forward is. I know there are other people involved in trying to write to NHS, possibly to Matt Hancock, to get this 6-week rule reversed on the 1st of July. And I was very, very interested in your point about the newspapers. I'm myself, I'm the sort of person who would go along that route and try to stir up interest in newspapers, and if possible, go to national newspapers and get them involved as well. Really just because politicians tend to listen to whoever shouts the loudest, and papers often shout the loudest. So yeah, I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, Barbara. What would you advise in terms of...
Regarding the newspapers, because I don't want to advise on your treatment itself, but regarding the papers, I would definitely say you should simplify your story. People, don't concentrate for too long. Pick up a story, and sometimes, cancer can be even a boring story for other people. So make it to the point and make it short, and tell them what your problem is and why it's unfair and why it might actually be harmful to you. So get whatever point you want to say, you get that across to the newspapers, or if you're writing to Matt Hancock, keep it 2/3 of a page. You never write 2 sides to anyone. They will only read the first side, and you've got to get that point there in the first 2 paragraphs. So always keep it punchy, keep it to the point, keep it how desperate a situation you've been left in. And you've got to gain that sympathy, and you've got to gain that attention. So you say, that's my target, and it's what I'm going to do.
Yes. And a point I haven't, thank you for that. A point I haven't made, of course, is that I don't know what the agreement is with the NHS, but on the open market, the treatment that I'm getting for 950 grams of cetuximab costs in the region of £10,000 in the open market, which is £10,000 plus the cost of all the nurses, etc., which is totally unnecessary. So the money side might also be
a good thing to use.
A good way to go down, because it's wasted money. And
yes,
it's wasting nurses, and it's unnecessarily giving you poor quality of life.
Your point is such a strong point. So you should be able to grab the attention, and there's other people also in your situation, again with the support group. Get that attention, write your story, get other people to work together with you.
Yes, I think that's the issue I have at the moment. I mean, Stephen, you're probably best placed to know who the other people are who are working this already or preparing for the argument for the 1st of July. Would you be able to put me in contact with them at all?
I'm not actually involved in that at all.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I am like you, someone who's had cancer, and I just happen to set up a Facebook group.
Okay.
But I do actually do awareness campaigns for Bowel Cancer UK. So I do have some way of connecting into Bowel Cancer. Are you in contact with the campaigns people in Bowel Cancer UK?
No.
So I would certainly recommend that, wouldn't you, Barbara?
Definitely. I've worked with them. They've asked me to join in, and Mark, and with this lowering the screening age, for instance, we were in London. You don't have to be there, but you can sign the petition and you can join, and you can
Yes.
Send it to your local newspaper, and there's a lot that can follow from that.
If you sat down and wrote your story,
yes,
sent it to Bowel Cancer UK, particularly in relation to the campaigns, they have been very good at picking up stories and running with them. During the whole situation during the beginning of COVID, when cancer diagnosis and treatment stopped, Bowel Cancer UK had quite a big impact with, I can't remember, somebody in East Anglia whose story was that they had been diagnosed but they couldn't get started on treatment because of COVID. And, you know, that helped to raise the profile and get the NHS to set up this parallel cancer treatment system. So that would definitely be my recommendation. And also listen carefully when Barbara tells you how to write a piece on a paper. She is an English teacher. She knows how to get the message across on a piece of paper. You know, perhaps we should ask her to do a workshop on that, and we can work on that. We've got a few minutes left. Any more questions? I've got one or two little things I wanted to ask, but any other questions that come from there? Perhaps I can just
Stephen, Paul wanted to say something.
I just wanted to make a point, because what Peter was saying is, it's just from our own experience, and really we've written to our MPs recently, and one of the referrals was to the Under Secretary of State, who eventually for health, who eventually did get back to me. But I have to say, if it comes to funding, the response was, we don't deal with funding. It's not our responsibility. It's down to the NHS Trust. So if you go down that route, it may pay to go direct rather than through the MPs and forward, because you may find that the response is somewhat disappointing. So that was just our experience. It may not be the same for everybody, but when it came to funding, they said they have no responsibility at all for the funding of drugs. So therefore they passed it on. So if you were going to go down that route, Peter, I just wanted to share that with you, because it could save you some time and effort.
Although it probably wouldn't hurt if you did have your MP on your side also writing to the...
Absolutely, he was superb. There was nothing at all wrong. He responded quickly and efficiently and effectively, but all he could do really was refer it to others, and it was when that referral process came into play that it all fell down, because those people don't have that responsibility to be able to take it forward. So I was just wanted to share that, so that you write to the right people and get in front of the right places.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Bowel Cancer UK have MPs who work with them on cancer. You know, they're cancer celebs.
Yeah, it's kind of knowing who they are. Yes.
Yes, John Barron, for instance, MP, and there are others who work very strongly with Bowel Cancer UK, and it's worth getting in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
Now, Philip hit on something earlier with his radical remissions about to do with looking at people who had stage 4 cancer and complete remissions. And I remember you telling me about a project you're involved with, which sounds amazing. Could you explain a little bit about it?
Yeah, I think you can. The extreme phenotypes that you referred to is in a project called Continuum Life Sciences, which Barbara is part of, having survived the disease more than 5 years. They're looking to study specific groups of people that have survived over 5 years. And it's run by a gentleman called Dr. James Hull, and he's a survivor himself, and he became a multimillionaire as a dentist, but he decided to become a philanthropist. and used much of his money to set up the organisation. Barbara knows probably a lot more than I do because she's entirely involved. He's a smashing guy. And we've met him, and she's done a talk at his symposium in Oxford last year that went very well, and we've really got to understand the whole process.
Well, it's a question I asked when I survived, when I was not supposed to survive. Why am I alive? And why has the drug worked on me and it doesn't work on other people? So, and I've run presentations in Europe on that question and challenged oncologists, pharmaceutical companies to study me and to say, why have I survived? And they never took it up, you know, even though I was quite pertinent. But when I saw, I was introduced to it through a friend, in fact, that this study, this research was being done by Dr. James Hull. I thought, I've got to be there. You know, he's looking from the opposite end. He's not developing a drug and then seeing whether it works. He's looking at the opposite end, at long-term survivors of 5 years or more. So anyone, please join in or ask for details. I can send them to you so that you can give your blood and be part of this research study, which is already proving fantastic results and is about to go into phase 1 trial. They're looking to form a vaccination using the bloods and the results, T cells from cancer survivors to cure people who are ill. But of course, there's a long way yet to go. So it's an amazing study, and it is really something that I would please ask if you can join in, do.
So that's Continuum Life Sciences.
Yes.
And people can find it on the internet. I went and had a look at it. I was totally amazed. Finally, you know, you've become not just a survivor, but a patient advocate, really. And you are involved with this sort of work all over, not just on a national stage, but on an international stage. Could you just tell me a little bit about what a patient advocate is?
With both Mark and myself, because Mark now represents carers, which he always did from the start, but now he's speaking out as well. Our advocacy started during my cancer journey itself, because I couldn't get the drugs I wanted. So that's when we started to say that this isn't fair. When I was able to pay for the drug with the help of my family, I was speaking out saying it's not fair that I've had this privilege and other people haven't. And that gave me actually something which helped me through my process. So a cancer advocate, I would say, is anyone who is using their experience to benefit others. And so many cancer patients want to do that. It's absolutely fine if you want to forget about it. You know, that doesn't go against you at all. It's absolutely fine. But a lot of people actually find a comfort. And for me, I felt very guilty to survive. I've always been told I'm stupid feeling like that, but I have felt like that, and I do. And it is a common thing that you feel guilty that you survived, and all the other people who were in the hospice with me, not nearly as ill as I was, have died. So this is where I wanted to do something. And through working with other patients, with other people who have cared for other people, through other survivors, and through politicians and charitable groups and NGOs, we feel we have made a change. I know we've made a change. So you can actually do so much to help other people. And that is what I call an advocate.
And you have to do an awful lot of reading up and finding out. That is a very pleasurable part of the journey, where you understand, you know, medical mechanisms going on in your body. And you talk to all the patients and the oncologists and people of that nature that you can gain a lot of information from. And then you start to understand what questions you should be asking, rather than just wondering what to ask.
And we've met the most amazing people like yourselves. We have been there. We've been there with the researchers, with the oncologists, with the people who are well known across the world, and sat at their dining table with them. And we've socialized, and there's so much more to our lives now than before. So this is where the cancer journey has been turned and completely reversed to something, you know, that we very much love living today.
Well, that is a very, very good point for us to end on. And just from everybody, I think, thank you very much, Barbara and Mark, for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.